All right, when I saw this comment about being a little Borg who goes into Evil Corp and plugs in, it really made me start thinking about where my life was because sometimes at night or when I'm home after work, probably not too much on the weekends, but I spend a lot of my time forcing myself not to think about work. And this morning, as I had nightmare after nightmare about work, I couldn't help but realize how plugged in we really are and how little there is to think about when you're not at work. Most of us don't have thriving social lives. If you're like me, you don't have any friends, you don't have any family, and you have really nothing to do on the weekends because you don't know anyone. You just sit here like a sad robot that's waiting to go back to the Borg to get a what would you call it? A boost, a pick me up from the corporation. And then you come home and you go into sleep mode again. And then you go back and you plug in. Fast forward 65 years and your life comes to an end. What did you get out of it? Nothing. So let's get into my monologue really quick. Every morning I wake up, drag myself to my workstation, and plug into the system like a good little corporate drone. Emails, meetings, deadlines, rinse and repeat. They told us hard work would pay off, but all I see are exhausted workers running on caffeine and broken dreams while the higher ups hoard the rewards. You start speaking their language. Per my last email, circle back until one day you realize you're not a person anymore, just another replaceable cog in the machine. The worst part, you don't even remember when you stopped resisting. I don't like the analogy of a cog because cogs have meaning, they have sides, and they take a while to wear out. The proletariat is the slimy, greasy, disposable stuff between the cogs. We lubricate the system, but we're not part of the system, and we never will be because the lubricant's just there to ensure that the system is running efficiently. Do we matter? At the end of the day, do you think about the grease? Do you think about the lube? Do you think about the lube that good old fleece isn't using on your rear end because it's too busy being used to lubricate the cogs of the machine? You would think that fleece would take a little pity, but fleece doesn't have any pity. Remember, it's always the hard way with him. All right, let's get into talking point number one. Corporate assimilation process. The company doesn't want you. They want a productive, replaceable drone who doesn't ask questions. This has been one of my toughest things at my current Evil Corp is that they don't want you talking. They want you doing. They want productivity to increase and never question the system. Why am I not getting promoted? Why am I not getting a pay raise? Why am I still sitting in the same place I was 4 years ago with the exact same title, but more work than I could have ever imagined for the McPaycheck? Because that's what they want you to do. A few videos back, I mentioned that it's a crime to ask Evil Corp for a pay raise. Because if you ask for things, then they'll start thinking about replacing you. Because this is what happens at every job. You get to a point in your job where your boss starts thinking, you know what? I could get someone to do his job for minimum wage. I'll just go onto Craigslist and find some other beep beep jerk off who's desperate enough to do this job. And guess what? They hire that person. They bring them in. They give them no real training. You really don't know what your job is in that interview, or it's too vague, right? Assistant, warehouse, tech. It's like the interview that I had when I was working for Insight. I interviewed with this recruiter, and he made it seem like this job with this company was an amazing opportunity. Day one, I'm being handed a script. You will read this to every single person that calls. You will smile and you will never take off your headset. And I was just like, what is this? This isn't what I applied to. This is a script reader job. And every time that I saw that piece of crap recruiter in the hallway, he would look at me and then he'd turn the other way because he knew that all his job was to be a salesperson to hire people to come in for very short periods of time. I've never worked in a place that had that kind of turnover before. And I mean, I work in a job that has hundreds of people get fired or leave right away. I mean, it is very common at this place to have a person who's being onboarded and before their first day, they no longer work here. Super common. And you're just kind of like, why does that happen? For one simple reason. No one applies to one job. Just like I've tried to express this to many people throughout my life. The same way that girls like to keep their options open or the same way that people are with their jobs. You're dating multiple jobs. When you're trying to feel it out, well, maybe this one's too far from your house. Maybe this one's more abusive than the other ones. Maybe this one, the pay's too low. You have to compromise, just like with a relationship. If Susie Rottencrotch is promiscuous, well, maybe not. Maybe Susie Rottencrotch is overweight. Well, that's possible too. Maybe Susie is prudish. Every job gives you those choices, and you've got to find a nice balance between them. Or like most people who have the ability, you are not going to stay in a desperation job or in a desperation relationship. Most people don't want to be with someone that's broke. For same reason, a corporation doesn't want to hire people that need money. Isn't that ironic that a corporation doesn't want to hire people that answer interviews questions honestly? Why do you want to work here? So I don't starve and end up on the street. The reality is they want to hear some phony baloney answer that both of you know isn't real. And when you ask about money, they tell you stupid things like, oh, money isn't the most important thing. It is to me. The only reason I'm going to subject myself to the workplace is for one simple reason. I need to eat and I need shelter. That's it. Asking any other question of me in a job interview is stupid and a waste of both of our time. If I'm going to sit through an interview where everybody's fake smiling and at the end of it they tell me it's minimum wage, I'm going to go get a job at McDonald's. Why would I do that to myself? In fact, I had this conversation with a recruiter about 6 months ago. How do you expect to hire anyone into these office jobs when they can walk across the street and work at fast food? And their answer was simple. There's no dignity in working in fast food. Fast food is humiliating. Most retail jobs are humiliating. If you're wearing a funny hat, a uniform, and a name tag, it's humiliating, especially once you reach 30. You can get away with them treating you, having them put you into a chicken costume until you become self-aware enough that this isn't right. I'm an adult with adult-sized bills. Just because I'm wearing this chicken costume doesn't make my rent go down, doesn't make my self-esteem go down. I'm still a person. I'm still a person that needs a lot of money to be able to continue coming to this crappy job. And corporations still think somehow there's dignity in work at the bottom. And it's a gaslighting process that will continue as long as the service industry is out there looking for Johnny Sixpack and Susie Rottencrotch, who have no dignity, who gave it up a long time ago. I have no work dignity. I'm ashamed to tell people where I work. And I don't even wear a uniform. It's just the fact that sometimes you look at people and you can see that they're poor. For instance, I was at the gym about an hour ago. There was a woman there. I'm going to say maybe early 40s. Wasn't that bad. She was no spring chicken. But we were working out right across from each other. We were about 10 feet away. And she was looking at me. And she would look at me, and then she'd type on her phone. And then she'd look at me and she'd type on her phone again. And I was like, whatever she's saying to that other person can't be good. But what are you supposed to do in that situation? It's the same thing that happens in a job interview, right? They look at you, they write down notes, they look at you again, and they're trying to decide what they're going to get out of you. And for certain, this lady was just trying to decide whether or not she was too old for me. And I could tell you, yes, she was. But at the same time, when you meet people in a job interview, you're both passing judgment. Can I work with Millennials team at Evil Corp? Hell no. I would never work with me at Evil Corp. Would I ever go out with that lady from the gym? Not a chance. Even though she was dressed as a very well off person. You don't wear those shoes with that brand of workout clothes and you're poor. There was nothing about her that seemed like she didn't have money. That's exactly how the corporation treats us. They do credit checks, they do education checks, they do criminal background checks. They want to know that when they're hopping into bed with you, that they really want to do this. Otherwise, they'll find something better. And since I'm all over the place, let's get back into talking point number 2. You're always plugged in. PTO isn't real. People take breaks just to recover from burnout, not to actually enjoy life. That's what work is. I don't think there's anyone in America who's been at a job for very long that hasn't felt the burnout, the constant need for more productivity and less time to enjoy yourself. Because I have like 60 hours of sick and vacation time already, and I can't take that time during the normal year. I'm going to have to take a couple days off in order to move, but there's just no way that I could take an actual vacation. Number one, I can't afford it. Number two, the place would probably burn down. And number three, I could see Gen Z walking around in the ashes when I come back to work. Gen Z has no sense of responsibility in the workplace. Every time I leave the office and I know he's going to be there by himself, I know he's up to no good. They're always up to no good. That's what Gen Z is. They're not people that take work with any amount of seriousness. When you're going to come to work and you're going to go sleep in your car on your lunch breaks and breaks, that to me is a sure sign that you don't like your job. And I've seen this. This is a characteristic that I've never seen before. Like, my first boss that hired me at this evil corp didn't even like me stopping work to eat lunch. He never stopped working, and he expected the same thing of his employees. If he saw you stop working, he'd walk up to you and ask you, "Do you need something to do?" And it was one of the most obnoxious things that I found about working for this person. Like, every once in a while, if I could hear him walking around in the office, I'd go on to like a news website when I'd get bored. Work is boring, let's face it. And any distraction that we can, we're going to take. But if I felt him coming around the corner, I'd quickly close my browser and he'd be like, "You don't have to do that." I'm like, "You were coming over here to look at my screen to see what I was doing. That's why you were coming over here. Otherwise, you would stay in your own office." But with that said, let's move on to talking point number 3. More work, same exploitation. Meanwhile, the people at the top hoard wealth, take month-long vacations, and gaslight you into being grateful for that 3% raise that barely keeps up with inflation. I didn't even qualify for that 3% raise this year because apparently I suck at doing my job according to my boss. The person I deal with the least amount at the entire corporation is the person that evaluated my job performance and told me I sucked. And I'm like, let's see. Every other person I work with seems to think I'm pretty damn good at my job. I have a 100% satisfaction on my evaluations, but yet I'm incompetent. And that's just the way it is. Their job is to keep you working, not to give you more money, not to let you go on vacation, not to let you acquire skills that would make you more attractive to a different employer. They want to keep you as stuck in the mud as humanly possible for as long as they can. The exploitation begins from day one. How do they hurt your career in the long term? How do they keep you with the least amount of overhead cost to them? And how do they keep you from talking? The last thing they want is workers talking about money in the workplace. And this is something I actually heard from my boss, that he was very annoyed that the last senior manager would openly talk about salaries among the workers, because he felt that that was rude and inappropriate. You know what's rude and inappropriate is the actual wages. When you meet another person, you start talking about money and you find out that they're also making minimum wage, you kind of begin to wonder. It's like, wait a minute. You're making 25 cents more an hour than I am? If I'm making 15 and you're making 15.25, but we're not supposed to talk about it because they don't want you to know that your coworker is making 25 cents more than you, isn't that the point? Is for you to find out? It's stupid, but it happens. It happens every single day at every single job in America. For some reason, someone else will get a shiny nickel more than you, and you will question why you didn't get that nickel. And the simple reason for that is that you don't deserve it. At least that's the way that I've felt at Evil Corp. You don't deserve more because you're worthless. And that attitude to me isn't new. I've experienced this attitude, this bias in the workplace throughout my entire life. And it is especially true when you're working and they have to pay someone new more money to attract them to the job. So let's say you've been stuck at the exact same $15 for the last 3 or 4 years, right? And they hire someone and they pay them $16 an hour, but you're not supposed to find that out. And if you do find out, chances are they're going to fire the person that's making $16 for telling you that they make a dollar more than you are. Because it's always very secretive about what you're getting paid. And I've heard stupid management say, oh, it's about professionalism. Really? I can't afford to pay my rent. I can't afford to eat. I can't pay my utilities. I can't afford to live. But talking about wages is not professional in the workplace. It is absolutely ridiculous at how good they are at making us behave the way that they want us in the workplace. Final talking point: avoid full corporate assimilation. Your job is just a paycheck. Your job is nothing more than that. They are never going to have any loyalty towards you. You will never have job security, and you will never live a comfortable life based on hourly work. That is part of the system functioning the way that it needs to function. The system has to oppress and exploit and treat everyone the same way. If you're not scared at work about losing your job, what's one of my most favorite lines? If you're not scared about losing your job, you're not scared enough about losing your job. Because every corporation goes to their first go-to weapon in order to increase profits for the people that matter is layoffs. It's cutting off the people that actually make the money for them and forcing the other people around them to do more. When I first started working for Allied Waste back in the early 2000s, I walked into a workplace that had 16 desks that were supposed to be used by the tech department. As of that day, they only had 2 people that were actually using that entire area. They had managed to cut back the job all the way down to 2 people. And you kind of just look around and you're like, well, where are all the people that used to work here? It's like, They don't work here anymore because they cut it down to the people that were the most proficient, did the most work, and were the most reliable. Loyalty isn't part of that equation, and it never will be because corporations don't like you, and corporations will never like you because you're just the help. You cost money. They don't like that. What they really want is a person that doesn't need money at the end of the day. They want someone who will come in and work just like SpongeBob. Big, happy smile, somehow has the money to buy a house and live, but doesn't need Evil Corp in order, doesn't need Evil Corp's money in order to be comfortable. Somehow they expect you to come to work only out of the goodness of your heart. And that's just not possible.